Welcome back to the channel. My name is CJ and today I'm going to share with you my tips for new hardcore or hardcore solo self-found players. So people new to playing hardcore in Path of Exile 2. This is every tip that I could think of off the top of my head that I have used personally on my own hardcore journey back in Path of Exile 1. Some of these are Path of Exile 2 specific, but most of the tips in this video will be applicable to hardcore anytime in the future. So most of the concepts will still apply even if you're watching this video a year from now or 2 years from now. Some context about my hardcore journey. I started hardcore because I saw a bunch of the streamers in PoE 1 were playing a lot of hardcore solo self-found, and I thought to myself, I wonder if I could do that. I wonder if I'm good enough to do that. But I soon realized after my first 2 playthroughs that it's more of a mindset and playstyle change than anything. If you can beat the campaign on softcore, you can beat the campaign on hardcore. It just requires a couple tweaks to your gameplay and mindset. Those 2 playthroughs specifically I talked about, prior to those I first played softcore to see how little times I could die in softcore. I died like 70 times or so just to get to maps. So I went from that to clearing up to Act 5 on my first shot with a class and ascendancy that was like only 1% of players used that season, which was Assassin. And I died on Kitava, rip. And then on the second playthrough, I beat the campaign. So even if you're dying like 70 times in softcore, it really is just a couple tweaks to your gameplay and playstyle, and you can do hardcore no problem. I really thought I'd have to learn like a lot, but it really isn't that bad. With that out of the way, grab yourself a coffee, hot beverage, or a glass of wine, and let's get into the video. First tip, and this is PoE 2 specific, but stop spam rolling / don't spam roll. This is bad. I've just noticed that a lot of people that I've seen, myself included in softcore, die when rolling, because the end of the roll animation, it's like you get glued to the fucking ground. It is awful. Stop spam rolling. There's even some bosses that fully punish this. So yeah, quick, easy one. Stop spam rolling. Tip number 2. Take it slow. Play like a pussy or a coward, but play confidently when bossing. For example, if you are mapping early, as in throughout the campaign, and you're playing a ranged build, just always keep enemies on the edge of your screen. Like, take it slow, clear everything methodically, don't let yourself get cornered, etc. Don't go into places where you think that you could die. But when you go and fight a boss, you want to be confident. You don't want to be playing scared, because that's how you're going to make mistakes. This ties into other tips later on, but just remember that. When you're fighting bosses, you do not want to play scared. So treat it like you are playing softcore. Like you aren't afraid of dying, because in softcore you die, who cares? You should basically play the same way on hardcore in that aspect. But I know new hardcore players might actually get a little anxious when they get to bosses, so I thought I'd mention that. Tip number 3, learn which mobs are dangerous on softcore, or learn the hard way. Slammers, exploders, projectile, proj spammers, mobs that spawn bombs under you, or throw bombs at you, or maybe they're dangerous because of an ailment such as freeze, poison, or bleed. Until you can solve these problems, you're gonna want to learn which of these mobs are dangerous and how to play around that. One of the best layers of defense here could just be one-shotting the mobs. If you kill them before they get a chance to even damage you, well, you're winning. Tip number 4, it's okay to farm a zone or previous zone if you feel weak for the current zone. In other words, play the game like it's a regular RPG. If you are feeling underleveled, go over level. There's no shame in it. Who cares what other people think? Just get there. Tip number 5. Instant HP flasks are your friend. I don't know if this is as important in Path of Exile 2. I feel like it's not, but in PoE 1, instant health potions were really good. But I think if I were to play hardcore, I still would prefer them, even in Path of Exile 2, even if I feel like they're not as mandatory. I thought I would just mention that. Tip number 6, defense over offense, especially early to mid game. So prioritize defense and defenses on the passive tree. You likely start the game with more than enough damage. As long as you're killing things in a reasonable amount of time, you do enough damage for hardcore. So I wouldn't be investing into more offense until you feel like you need it. Tip number 7, practice acts 1, 2, 3. That is 1 to 3, not 1, 2, and 3. Practice acts 1 to 3, at least right now in early access, because that's all we have access to. Until acts 4, 5, 6 come out, practicing acts 1 to 3 is going to be the most benefit you can get currently for learning the campaign, so to speak. The more familiar you are with the fights and the zones, the less you're going to die. Tip number 8. You can practice all bosses in softcore. Make a softcore character with a similar build or the same build, or even a completely different build. What I mean by that is, obviously if you run the same build, it's going to be more transferable, but if you play a build like, well, at least for me in Path of Exile 1, like a necromancer, a minion necromancer, you don't really have to do anything to fight bosses on a character like that, so you can focus fully on learning the boss's moveset rather than worrying about executing your attacks or skills properly. You can just focus on running and dodging. So that's just something to consider if you are practicing bosses in softcore. Tip number 9. This is kind of patched now, but I don't know if GGG will change this in the future, but I had written down wait 5 seconds before looting rares because on-death effects are bullshit right now. One of the most recent patches has addressed this, and I haven't found myself dying to an on-death effect in a while, but for a while I was, and it was annoying. And that's actually specifically the reason why in Path of Exile 2 so far, I hadn't played any hardcore. Next tip, tip number 10. If you have not played maps before, but you got there on hardcore, congrats. But know this, know that certain map modifiers are deadly, specifically the suffixes. Check PoE to DB, the website, for what suffixes can roll on maps or waystones in this game. If you get a map that has 3 prefixes, because prefixes are always positive, then you don't need to add any more affixes to your waystone until you get way stronger. I wouldn't risk it on hardcore, because if you already have 3 good, well, if you already have 3 prefixes because they're always good, why make it scarier? It's not worth it, especially on hardcore, until you know you're way stronger. Some of these deadly suffixes include minus max resistances, monsters deal X% of damage as extra damage, burning ground, incoming monster damage, increased monster damage penetrates resistances, monsters poison or bleed on hits, increased monster speed, especially on breaches or delirium, increased monster attack / cast speed, increased monster crit, players have percentage less recovery of life and energy shield, players cursed with enfeeble, and monsters have increased freeze buildup. Some of these get better with time, or if you play carefully, such as burning ground, you can get away with playing these waystones or maps with these affixes. Other ones like poison and bleed on hit, once your build solves this, then you can play those no problem. Same with players cursed with enfeeble, since that's just less damage dealt. If you are much stronger, then that becomes less of a negative, and you can get away with playing these waystones. And freeze build up as well, if you have solved getting frozen, which you should definitely. That should be high on the priority list in hardcore, because if you get frozen or stunned, you'll most likely die. That was the case in Path of Exile 1, it's the case now. Getting frozen is fucking scary. Only a couple tips left, and if you found any of these tips helpful, I'd appreciate it if you could click that subscribe button or give the video a like and a comment. I would really appreciate it. Tip 11. Press escape. In PoE 1, you would have logout macro, but in PoE 2, you just press escape. Just press escape and log out if you think you're going to die. All the best players do it, so who cares what other people think? If the best hardcore players do it, you're not better than them. You can do it too. So yes, press escape and log out if you need to. If you think you're going to die. And you reacted in time, obviously. Tip number 12. This is a massive tip. It's kind of been addressed slightly with the on-death effects. But anyway, accept that you're going to die. And accept that you're going to die to some bullshit. Most likely an on-death effect is what I had written. But they're kind of better now. If you keep dying in a certain zone, practice that zone. If it has lots of certain types of damage types, try and have the relevant resistances by the time you get there to make it easier. And the final tip, if GGG adds back the crafting bench, use it. It was a super reliable way of getting resists and damage early on, but it isn't currently in Path of Exile 2. I'm hoping they do add it though. I really was a fan of the crafting bench. Oh, and I didn't know why I didn't mention this, but bonus tip, probably because it's pretty obvious, but learn from your deaths. If you die, try and learn from it. What you could have done better. If you have shadow play or something, maybe shadow play when you die and review the footage. Anyway, that's all the tips I have for you today. I hope this video really helped you. And if I end up thinking of more tips, I'll definitely make a follow-up video for this. If you're a more experienced PoE player and are watching this video for some reason, and you can think of something helpful that I missed out on talking about, please share it in the comment section below for our new PoE players. I want to foster a positive and helpful community here. So yeah, that would be really cool. Anyway, dear viewer, I really appreciate it if you have stuck around this far into the video. Please look out for the next video, which is the end game mapping tips. That'll be coming out within the next 2 weeks. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Peace!
Thank you.